I'm Holly Madison, and I listen to Brian Shapiro.
Hi, this is William Shatner, and I listen to Brian Shapiro.
Right now, the day's biggest news stories from a Vegas perspective. This is the Vegas Take with Sharp and Shapiro.
All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take, rolling out hour number three. I almost said hour number 3. Wow. That was a long hour. We took a lot of calls in hour number 1, but rolling out hour number 2. It is the Vegas Take. So glad you could join us. So much more to get to. As I mentioned, coming up in hour number 3, we have Michael Shapiro from Sports Illustrated to preview the World Series Game 1 today. Talk a little NBA. Luca Fury, who's one of the best MMA handicappers in the country, will be joining us. But wanted to get this guy back in the studio. He joined us last week. He's a field organizer for the Bernie Sanders campaign. He's also a minister and an activist here in Las Vegas, and he's done a lot of good things for a lot of people. We don't always agree with everything that he says, but we welcomed him back in, and he graciously agreed to do so. That would be the minister, Stretch Sanders, joining us. Stretch, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Good morning, guys. How we doing?
Doing good. Boy,
Doing great, Stretch.
We have a lot to talk about with you.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. We love having you in. So let's start with UNLV. There's a story that comes out where, apparently somebody writes on a bathroom a threatening message towards African Americans and Bernie Sanders. It should be considered a serious threat, and I don't know if it was. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But now UNLV students are very, very upset, particularly a group of protesters that was organized by the Black Student Organization. They're frustrated, saying that the university took at least several days to warn students of this threat. And my question is, number 1, why did it take the university several days? Number 2, what if something did happen the day of or the day after? Wouldn't the university have been liable for what luckily did not take place? So what are your thoughts on this issue? And do you think UNLV did not react fast enough and didn't tell people what was going on?
Well, that's a great question. I think that it could be an investigation process. I also think that it could possibly be, and I say possibly, maybe it was not taken as serious. Because a lot of times, even though mass shootings are so popular in American culture now, we don't walk in the streets or go different places with that on our minds. But I try to live like, when I'm in places, I'm on alert. When I'm at a movie theater and somebody keep walking around, I'm looking at them. But I think that some of us, we still have our guard down. And so I think that it can be not taking it serious. And I think because the fact that Bernie Sanders or the campaign was threatened, I think it put more hype, because I'm pretty sure that Bernie will be coming to Vegas in the next few months or so. So it's more of like a prevalent thing. And I know whoever made the threat, it was a slur or something that was threatened towards African-American students.
So let me ask you this then. And I hate to have to ask this, but I'm going to, because I think it's a fair question. If it was a threat towards white students, do you think that it would have been treated differently?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, white and black gets treated differently. So nothing is taken serious until it happens to a white person, right? Look around the country, there's 60,000 plus black women and girls who are missing. Nobody's saying anything. There's not a white outcry, not a white outrage. But let that been white women who come up missing, our hella break loose. And so we still live in a world where, unfortunately, white life has more value on black, brown, red, and yellow life. And it can definitely be the case in the UNLV situation. I can't say for sure, because there's so much to think about when a school is being threatened. I don't know the procedure that they take. So I don't know if the 5 days, if that's the normal protocol.
They're claiming they didn't want to scare people. But I would rather people be scared than something happen and people lose their lives. That's my opinion.
They don't want to scare people, but also they don't want people to drop out of school, because people are paying to be there. So it could be a money thing as well.
Sadly, I was sad to hear your answer. I hope you're wrong. I don't know the answer to it, but if it was treated, you're saying it would have been treated differently if it was a threat towards white students. Let me ask you this question, though, because we've talked a lot about police brutality. We've talked a lot about, in general, how police treat minorities in specific situations. We've talked that ad nauseum last week. But I want to ask you this question, because I think this is an important question. I do believe that there are issues between law enforcement and African Americans. There's no question about that. However, with that being said, you would agree, black on black crime is also a huge problem, particularly what's going on in Chicago. Why is it leaders like Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, as soon as a white police officer pulls the trigger and kills an African American, whether they have all the evidence or not, they'll be the first people to speak up about that. But yet I rarely ever hear leaders, African American leaders like those, talk about black on black crime. Why is that?
Well, first I will say, I believe you take any situation that happens to a white person, if it happens to people of color, the white person is going to be taken more serious. I don't care if we in McDonald's, if both of our food is late, they're going to take you more serious. That's just the reality, that America values white life more than people of color life. The proof's in the pudding. As far as why these national leaders like Reverend Jesse Jackson, Reverend Al Sharpton, you know, they're in a position where they're activists, but they're celebrities, right? And so it's, at this point, it's some personal gain. They're both over 60, trying to stay relevant. If they do a march for black and black crime, is it going to bring out the media? Is it going to bring out CNN? Is it going to bring out the attention they still need? This is how they eat at this point, right?
So you don't think there'd be as much attention if they talked on black crime, yet when they talk about a white officer killing an African American, you're saying you think they do it because of the attention.
They capitalize from it.
Well, yes, I think, but also that's not every black leader though, right? I'm just speaking on them two particular because those are the ones we always see when it comes to a case. But also too, they're civil rights activists, right? A civil rights activist, some people look at civil rights as you only get involved when it's a black versus, white, or people of color versus white.
So do you think that they actually believe in the things that they preach?
I don't know what they believe. I know what they portray to believe, and that's that they try to fight for civil rights of African black people. But I do know that, like I said, for the last 25 years from Sharpton and the last 30 for Jesse, they are celebrities, right? They have talk shows, they have books. Right. Al Sharpton was offered Dancing with the Stars. They're looked at as celebrities now,
Fair
right?
enough.
And so the agenda may be different.
When you think black activists, you think those two people. I mean, that's just the standard.
Of course.
Like those two are branded into the American brain.
Of course. But my position is different. So I don't just speak loud when there's a case of white killing black. I try to have a voice when it comes to black killing black. But at the end of the day, black on black crime to me is a product of white supremacy. A lot of us, we try to separate that. And they say, well, Stretch, you're so upset because you have black on black crime or white on black. What about black on black? There's no such thing as black on black. Black on black is a product of white creating a climate for black. When black people are killing each other, we not just kill every race kills themselves.
Wait, hold on. So you're saying that you're blaming white people for the crime that's taking place, black on black crime in Chicago?
I'm blaming white supremacy. Because if you go to any other area in Chicago, you don't see that same climate.
Okay, but I'm confused now.
Confused.
Okay, I'm confused. There's no question there's white supremacists out there. For example, the next subject, I wanted to talk to you about this African-American church where a swastika was written on at the church. So I do want to talk about that, but I have to, a little pullback for what you said. When I see an African-American, well, I don't see it, but when I hear about an African-American killing another African-American, the last thing I do is say, well, that's a white supremacist's fault. That's that African-American who decided to carry that firearm and execute another African-American. If I see a white person do it, then I'm going to blame that white person. If I see a white supremacist go into a Walmart and kill 22 people, then I'm going to blame white supremacy and that person who did it. But the last thing I'm going to do, if I see another African-American stab another African-American on the street, I'm not going to blame a white supremacist for that. I'm going to blame that individual for committing that crime. You don't think that's fair?
Dr. King said, wherever darkness is, crimes will be committed. Who has created the darkness? Not us. When you take
I didn't create it.
But you have to understand, I'm not blaming you as an individual.
Yeah.
It's the difference between being a white supremacist and white supremacy. The C is the systematic system. If you look at white communities, you have communities, the trailer park community, which would be the poor white communities, it's not the same level of violence. Why not? Because it's not the same level of climate.
I get that, but why would you not hold that person accountable? Maybe didn't have a good upbringing, or maybe the family wasn't there for that individual. Whatever the case may be, why wouldn't you blame that individual for the crime?
I'm not saying don't hold accountable, but I'm saying in order for us to stop it, we have to get to the root. So what has caused that?
For example, what is causing most of the black on black crime in Chicago? It's drugs, right? Mm-hmm. It's gangs, it's drugs. The same thing exists with Caucasians. There are with white. There are white. There's methamphetamines.
I disagree.
No, there's a lot of white ghettos, and there's a lot of white on white crime that exists too. And the origins of that is drugs and the amount of money that you can make from dealing drugs.
When he says a ghetto, that's a condition. That's a climate. We're speaking on climates, not individuals. Now, I'm not saying the person who killed somebody that he should not go to jail. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is, if you talk about, he said gangs and drugs.
Yeah.
In 1996, it was on record that the CIA was busted for smuggling cocaine. Ricky Freeway Ross said in L.A. he was the first person to be given cocaine by the CIA. Nobody believed him. Gary Webb is a person who exposed this, and later he was killed in attempted suicide. Who gave us the drugs? There's gangbangers who say there are certain officers who plant the pistols on them. So the same entity that say turn in the gun, give it back to you. How are these gangbangers given access to machine guns? And
I agree.
Who giving them these guns?
But if you asked
Right,
me,
and why is there a gun store on almost every, in a liquor store on almost every corner?
Why, when white kids are on drugs, they go to rehab? When we on drugs, we go to prison. This is by design, brother.
But
all this is by design.
Okay, but if you asked me, what is the major reason why there are so many African Americans that are behind bars or committing crime? The answer that I would say is upbringing. Born out of wedlock, maybe not being raised by both a father and a mother, being raised in a poor community, not having an education. I don't know who created the community, but can't you get out of that yourself by getting an education, by getting a good job, by being a good mother, by being a good father? I'm trying to say that many of these situations with the black-on-black crime, I personally believe they didn't have the proper upbringing. They didn't have the proper education. The family has no money. Many of these people are homeless. They have nowhere else to go but to join gangs because they have no pathway in life.
Let me tell you this. When white women wanted to get assistance, they can get assistance.
African Americans get assistance.
Black people wanted to get assistance. I'm speaking historically in the 60s and 50s. When black people wanted to get assistance, they tell us you can get welfare, which is government assistance.
Right.
But if there's a man in the home, he can be arrested. So who forced the black man out the home? It's easy to look at and saying, but you have single parent households, black people on drugs and gangs, but who created those conditions? See, I'm not blaming every individual white person. I'm blaming white supremacy. Richard Nixon said out his mouth that they knew if they said when they waged the war on drugs, it was a war on black people, but he couldn't use that term.
Right.
So his thing was attack two groups: the hippies, who was against the draft, and black folks, the Black Power movement.
All right.
He said, I want to kill anybody who wants to raise up a black messiah. They killed King, they killed Malcolm, they killed Chairman Fred Hampton.
And listen,
anybody trying to give us hope, they kill.
Listen, I am the first person to say that white supremacy is an issue. It is a problem. And while I want to take some phone calls at 257-5396. Again, 702-257-5396. But since we're on the topic of white supremacy, it's an awful story. A church, African-American church in Las Vegas, was vandalized and spray painted with a swastika. If you're just joining us, we're speaking with, I guess we could call you, the Reverend, right? Are you fair? Is that fair?
The minister.
Minister? Yeah. Okay. The Reverend has a better tune to it, but I'll call you Minister for now. Stretch joining us in studio, and we're taking your phone calls at 257-5396. So we're just talking about white supremacy. What do you make of this story of this church, vandalized with a swastika? What do you make of that, Stretch?
So we live in a climate, as I stated, that we have to understand white supremacy is not just a person walking down the street. It's a systematic system that has been put in place since slavery. We think that we used to sing in the 60s, we shall overcame. When Obama got elected, we said we have overcome. It's not true. So I'm not surprised when I see churches that have swastikas on them, because at the end of the day, hatred is still real. But it goes back to say, we'd be quick to say, well, black people, you hear white people say, well, black people this, black people that. Black people ain't running into churches shooting a group of white people. Black people are not putting negative or vulgar or disrespectful images or words on churches. White folks are doing this. Am I seeing you guys? Of course not.
No, I understand what you're saying. It's usually the same description. Going back to Columbine, usually it is disturbed white people that are committing these mass shootings.
When they do that, do they ever call these white individuals terrorists, or do they call them lone wolves?
Well, I think
lone
they're terrorists.
Gunmen? Of course they are.
They definitely are mentally ill terrorists.
And so I think that I wouldn't even say mentally ill. They know what they're doing. I would say that with as far as this church, though, it's unfortunate, but there are a lot of churches that have been vandalized within Vegas in the last 10 years and all over the country. I think how we eliminate that is that we must expose this type of stuff. That's why conversations like this are helpful, because it brings light to it. People always say that, and it grinds my gears, Vegas is not racist. I'm going to say it like this. Wherever you have white people, you will have racism.
All right, that's
point blank.
It's a controversial statement. I want to know what people out there think. The number to call is 257-5396. Stretch just said it himself. Stretch Sanders, the minister, he says, wherever we have white people, we have racism. What are your thoughts on that? 257-5396 is the number to call. Why don't we start off with Gary? Gary, you're a caller next on the Vegas Take. What's on your mind?
What's up, Gary?
Okay, I don't think Gary was ready, so let's go to Jay. Jay, you are next on the Vegas Take. Jay, what's on your mind?
Hey, I just want to say that anybody who takes what this guy says seriously is a guppy. Come talk to me and I'll sell you a bridge. Wherever there are white people, there's racism. I mean, this guy is a racist himself. I mean, this stuff has gone along. And the reason that they do this is because white people actually fall for this baloney. In every other country where black people are, in Asia, no matter if it's the Middle East, none of this, because they don't fall for this.
All right, Jay, hang on the line. Jay, hang on the line. Let's let Stretch respond to what you just said, and then hang on. Go ahead, Stretch.
Thank you for your question, Jay. So for those who cannot hear what Jay said that my question basically is baloney. My statement of wherever there's white people that be racism. I say that because people of color cannot be racist. Racism is race plus power. We have no power. I can call you all type of derogatory names, but I don't own anything. I don't control anything. Even the Hispanic communities that have their own neighborhoods, where they getting their produce? From white farms. At any point, that white farm can cut them off, and their livelihood is shut down. Their communities are shut down. Black people are not the majority. We're not in charge. So racism is a systemic thing. See, white people always get defensive because it's one of them things where it's a guilt thing. You don't have to feel guilty if you're not operating as our current day white supremacist.
Let's let Jake
So it's
interact.
a systematic thing.
Okay.
We can't be racist. We can be prejudiced.
Yep. Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah. I just want to say that is an actual made-up definition that is not in the dictionary. That is a definition that gives black people the right to be racist against other groups. One thing that your guest hasn't acknowledged is that some of the most adamant racist people against blacks are actually Hispanics, but they don't talk about this because it doesn't fit the narrative. I lived in Los Angeles. I saw Mexicans calling blacks the N-words left and right. They didn't care. They didn't care if you called them a racist because they didn't have this white guilt, a complex within them. So all this is a shakedown to get more money from white people. That's all this is. They don't go after any other group, and every other group they live in around the world, whether it's the Middle East, they treat them 10 times worse, and they say nothing because they know they will get nothing from.
Okay, Jay, can I just interject? Let me just interject real quickly, Jay. I agree with a little bit of what you said, and I agree with a little bit of what Stretch said. I don't agree with everything both of you have said. First of all, I do think if you're an African American, you can be racist towards another race, gender, whatever. I think that's right. That's where I disagree with Stretch. But Jay, here's where I disagree with you. You have to understand, okay? There is racism out there. There are white people that are racist. We talk about these racist stories every day. I'm not saying that the majority of people that are white are racist, and I don't believe that. Just like I don't believe the majority of police officers are racist, and I know Stretch would disagree with me on that.
Totally.
But, Jay, you have to agree that there are white people out there that look at someone that is an African American and they treat them differently because of the color of their skin. You have to at least give us that.
I will give you that, but will you acknowledge that what he said is racist, where he said wherever you find white people, you will find racist? That is... I'm not going to call him racist for saying that, but I will say this. I think where you have any human beings, I don't care what the color of their skin is, whoever you are, there are going to be a small amount of ignorant racist people out there no matter what the color of your skin is. Jay, I've got to get to some other of your calls, but I appreciate the phone call.
Thanks for the call, Jay.
Thank you, Jay.
257-5396 is the number to call. Why don't we go to Alexis? Alexis, you are next on the Vegas Take. You're on with Stretch. Go ahead.
Hey, Alexis.
Hey, guys. I actually work with Stretch. So, first of all, thank you, Stretch, for everything that is that you're trying to bring to light right now. This conversation took a turn for me, so it's very difficult to figure out where to start. But I think I'll go back to what you guys were mentioning earlier in the conversation in regards to black-on-black crime. I think that it does our community an injustice to only refer to some of the most famous civil rights activists, quote unquote, that we have out there, because there are black people that are out here on the ground every single day trying to make things better in the black community. So I guess my question is why is crime referred to black on black when it's within our community, opposed to when it's another culture? It's not considered Latino on Latino or white on white. The black community has their issues that we are trying to work through, and there are many activists such as myself, such as Stretch.
Alexis, can I respond to that?
Definitely.
First of all, thank you for what you do. I had have no doubt that there are so many good people like you and Stretch out there that are trying to do what's good for your community. But when I think of Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, when I think of those two people, I think they are race baiters. I think I guess I could look at Ferguson as a perfect example of that. I think what they do is they look at a tragedy that happens and they automatically assume 100% that race has to be a factor. Now, in some of these cases, race is a factor, but I don't appreciate the fact when Al Sharpton immediately accuses an officer of shooting an African American and it had to be wrongdoing because they were black. I think some people, not all, but some people rush to judgment, and I think Ferguson is a perfect example of that.
And Alexis, we were talking about black-on-black crime in Chicago only.
I agree that we do have people such as Al Sharpton that would use their platform just for the sake of not necessarily bringing attention to a subject, but to bring attention to themselves. And I would appreciate for other people that are of diverse backgrounds and cultures different from ours to also understand that Black people are not a monolith. Like, that's something that we scream from the mountaintops.
Sure.
We are not a monolith.
No,
and
I
so
agree.
to immediately associate people like Al Sharpton with all Black people.
No, I'm not doing that. No. Alexis, I'm not doing that.
It's
Yeah.
not you specifically,
Yeah.
but we can agree that that is what a lot of people do.
I would
And
say
there-
95% of the country does that, actually.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so there are a lot of people that instantly believe that. We believe everything that those so-called social leaders believe when that's not
Sure.
the case.
No,
But if we're
I understand.
speaking
Listen.
specifically about police brutality,
Sure.
I think the record speaks for itself. You know,
All
policing
right, well, let's talk
in
about that.
America.
Alexis, let's talk about that next segment. I'm up against a
Definitely.
hard break. I appreciate your phone call.
Hey, great call, Alexis.
We're gonna take all your calls coming back. Scott, Tony, Brian, Bree, Gary, you're all waiting on hold. I have one phone line open at 257-5396 if you want to call in. No, I do not believe that the majority of police officers are executing African Americans. We'll get to that coming up next. We'll talk about that. I also want to talk about Donald Trump using the lynch word to describe impeachment. We'll talk a little bit about the Bernie Sanders campaign, and a black Wisconsin security guard got fired for using the N-word. It's a crazy story. We'll get to that coming up next. You're listening to The Vegas Take. All right, welcome back. Thank you for joining us. It's The Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro. Our special guest in studio, it's Minister Stretch Sanders, a field organizer, by the way, for the Bernie Sanders campaign and an activist here in Las Vegas. We're talking about racial divide. We're talking about racism. You could agree, you could disagree. The number to call, 257-5396. We talked about a UNLV threat and the swastika at this Pentecostal church, the use of the N-word, and now Donald Trump using the word lynching. We'll talk a little bit about that, too. Again, taking your phone calls. We have one phone line open at 257-5396. Why don't we start off this segment with Stretch Sanders and Brian. Brian, thank you for calling in. What's on your mind?
What's up, Brian?
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Brian.
You know, in my humble opinion, Stretch, I hate to say this, but I believe you have become our local version of Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. It seems to me that you're the local race hustler who uses race to stir up everything. In my humble opinion, you are perpetuating the problem, not doing anything to make it better.
All right, well, let's let him respond to that, and then we'll keep you on, Brian. I promise you. We'll let you respond. Go ahead, Stretch.
All right, so to the audience who did not hear the question or the statement, Brian said that basically he think I am the Las Vegas Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton, that I stir up and pretty much, I guess, try to gain something from race baiting or making noise about race. Well, Brian, my first question to you would be, what are you doing to end racism in the city of Las Vegas? And second, I would say, and that's a question I want you to just answer to yourself. Second, I would say to me, I'm not Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton, nor that I'm embarrassed or ashamed to be compared to them. I think that both of those gentlemen have done some great things in their years of being activists in this community, in the black community in general. I have my disagreements. I have my criticism. I'm not going to state that with you. I'll state that with them. But I will say this. I am in a lane of my own. I'm not going to get into stating what I've done. But at the end of the day, anybody that knows me personally knows that Minister Stretch Sanders gives his life. I put my life on the line for this community. I put my life on the line for not just the black community, but for the white community. When there was the October 1st shooting, when the city was in turmoil, the first person to step up to put together a visual was me. When I saw that the community had thousands of people who did not have Thanksgiving dinner, I stepped up and I opened a space and I served people dinner every year, which we're doing this year, our 4th annual, under the banner All Shades United.
And you should be commended for
and
that.
So, and when I figure people need to eat in the summertime, we do the barbecues for the 4th year. Also, every other Sunday, I go out and serve people. So I would say this. I would say that I'm doing what I'm doing. But people, I don't know what race Brian is, but people normally, those who are white, it's a guilt thing. And they think that we should live up to their standards of what they think we should do. As a white person, you don't have a right to tell me how I should try to end racism in the black community, especially when most likely Brian is not even being productive. So those who criticize Jesse and Al and myself mainly are those who not even putting in no work. You just talking loud, ain't saying that you're a Facebook warrior, you're a Twitter warrior.
So
you're
Brian, go ahead and respond to that.
Blowing cold air.
Stretch, okay?
Go ahead.
Let me tell you what I've done in my life, okay? I had a Nigerian woman live with me because she was kicked out of her father's home because she was pregnant out of wedlock. She spent a year in my house with my wife, and I had my first daughter, Amy, and she had her first son, Uzo, while she lived in my home. I took care of her. I cared for all of her needs. And then after she had the baby, she eventually went back to Nigeria and was reunited with her father who had disowned her. And that little boy is now the apple of his eye. So what I'm saying to you today is basically what I've heard from you last week and thus far today is pure nonsense.
All right, Brian. Well, listen, you're entitled to your opinion, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
We got to
have a good one, brother.
Call, Brian.
We got to get to
for the call, baby.
We got to get to some other calls. 257-5396 is the number to call. Why don't we go to Tony? Tony, you're next on the Vegas Take. Go ahead.
What's up, Tony?
Did we lose Tony? Tony, are you there? All right, I think we lost Tony. 257-5396, the number to call. Let's go to Gary. Gary, you are next on the Vegas Take. You're on with the minister, Stretch Sanders. Go ahead, Gary. Gary, are you there? Did we lose you? Gary, I don't think that phone call went through.
The people are afraid, Stretch.
Yeah.
And also,
Gary, are you there?
Yes.
Sorry
up, Gary?
about that,
How you
Gary.
doing, Gary?
Go ahead.
I just want to say this subject, what do you call it, is interesting to me because this is what I've been listening to all my life. I'm white, and what do you call it? It never seems to end. And I think that people of color, I don't know if that's the right phrase, dark people need to get a thicker skin. Now, I don't doubt that you're a good minister and a good guy, and you mean well. And I don't agree with the last caller, although he's a good man too, I guess. Okay, so I think there's a big problem, and it's in the black community. It's more the black community, their culture. I don't know, you guys have too much of an inferiority complex or something, but if I was black, I could care less about racism. I would outgrow it and outshun it. And there's not enough criticism among black people. I see black young men walking around and some middle-aged men walking around pushing a baby carriage with a baby, and their pants are around their ankles, and they deliberately look like morons. If I was a black guy, and if I get on a public bus or someplace and I see this stuff going on, I would curse them out right in public. I would call them everything.
All right. Well, Gary, hang on a second. Let's Stretch. And by the way, Gary, we do appreciate the call. And the number to call, 257-5396. Minister Stretch Sanders joining us. Stretch, why don't you respond to that? He's talking. Let's just respond to one part of that call because there's a lot he said there.
Okay. So
number one, he doesn't sound like he's black. He's not black, number one. Number two, he's talking about the way African Americans dress when their pants, he said, down to their ankles. Respond to that.
Well, thank you, Gary, for your statement. Well, number one, it's easy for us all to say, if I was black, what I would do. The reality is you're not, and so you're speaking in on something you have no idea of. As far as how black people carry ourselves, we carry ourselves because we were put through one of the worst holocausts known to man, which was slavery, then given 100 years of Jim Crow, then we were forced in conditions that make us behave less than human. So do I kind of feel distaste when I see black people who sag? And of course I do. I don't sag. At one point I did sag.
Is that what they call it, sagging?
Sagging, but I didn't have knowledge of who I was.
There are parts of
my culture.
There are parts of my body that are sagging.
I didn't know my culture,
we don't have to talk about that.
But the moment I started getting knowledge of myself, I began to be proud of being black.
Right, sure.
So when the knowledge got in me, my mind lifted. When my mind lifted, so did my pants. Do you understand what I'm saying? So the reason why most of our men are sagging and behaving is because the spirit has not been awakened. Mm-hmm. Black people, we're gods. But you notice we greet each other, what's up, dog? If you flip the word God, if you flip the word dog, it's God. I'm not saying God with a capital G, a lowercase g. Like the Bible says, ye are all gods, children of the Most High God. But we don't think like that. We think like we're the ends, I-G-G-A-S.
Can I ask you a question?
So
though?
it's conditioned.
Speaking of speaking, for like when you see somebody like AB, who is not in the NFL anymore, and you see the way he talks on Twitter, and the man struggles to put a sentence, a coherent sentence together, don't you think, you're a well-spoken guy, don't you think that when we see people like that of color speaking that way, it sets a horrible example to young children to also speak that way?
At one point, I didn't speak how I spoke now. See, people think I came out the womb, Minister Stretch. If I was Minister Stretch, I was Stretch Daddy. But as I stated before, when I got knowledge of who I was, knowledge of my God, my culture, my religion, I was able to feel proud. And whenever we feel proud, we still can't win because white folks say, he's wearing a shirt that says Black Power, he's racist. But if I say it black ends, you wouldn't say nothing. So it seems that white people want us to do what they want us to do. At the end of the day, any black person that walks around, why would he say he would go and cuss the person out? Why would I condemn?
But if
it's clean glass, dirty glass. I'm not going to condemn my brother. That brother doesn't know any better. That sister doesn't know any better. They've been taught. They've been trained.
And I understand
Malcolm X said, who taught you to hate yourself?
But Stretch,
he wasn't talking about us.
If I was wearing a shirt that said white power, would you have come on this show again? Be honest.
I would come on because we're going to dialogue about it. I'm not running from no conversation.
But be honest, you would think I was a racist and you wouldn't like the shirt.
Because we have to understand that white people have the most privilege in this country and they always want to be a part of everything. We saying Black Power because we feel powerless. We have no power. How would you going to say white power? You got power.
So let me ask you this.
It's an oxymoron.
If black men are gods, then what are white men and what are Mexican, Latino men and what are Italian men? What are Asian men?
Well,
in your eyes?
I'm be honest with you.
I'm certainly a god myself.
I'm not. Look, you could be a god. You could be a god.
I'm a Jewish god.
The Bible says, "Ye are all gods, children of the Most High God." So if you believe in God, you a god. So I can't say who's not a god. This is my take on it, JD. My job as a minister, I'm for black people first. Point blank. Period. The Bible says, "Love thy neighbor as thyself." Neighbor love is predicated off self-love. Predication means based upon. I cannot love the white and don't love my own. So I'm saying we're gods because I want to empower us. I'm not saying no other race is a god.
Right.
But what I'm saying is the majority of black people in our community, we don't really exemplify God-like behavior. So I want to empower us to let us know we're not dogs. We're not trap queens. Just be a queen. You're not, what's up, dog? No, what's up, brother? What's up, king?
Well, especially thinking
that
about
mindset up.
like where the origins of the saggy pants actually came from, which was it was a prison thing.
Well, let's continue to discuss that. We got to get to some more of our phone calls. We do have a few phone lines open. It is the Minister Stretch Sanders that is joining us in studio talking about race. 257-5396 the number to call. Let's go to Bree. Bree, thank you for waiting patiently on hold. You're next on the Vegas Take. Go ahead.
What's up, Bree?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Bree.
I just wanted to say that I really appreciate where you're coming from and out here bringing light to this subject. I myself, I'm 22. I'm a white woman. I'm very proud of who I am and who I came from. But I must agree that there is racism here in Vegas. I see it every day around the town, every single day, working in schools. I do school photos, and I see it with the kids. And I just wanted to say that, like, it's our society that makes the kids the way they are, you know? And there is racism from the beginning of time, and I feel like until we start changing, it's gonna just keep going.
All right. Well, Bree, let's let Stretch respond to that, Bree. And by the way, we do appreciate your comments and we appreciate your phone call.
Bree, you are a breath of fresh air. I'm going to give you, if you have a social media _official_Stretch, my Instagram _Stretch Sanders on Twitter. Please connect with me. I want to stay in touch with you because you are the type of people that we need, particular white people that we need. She said something that was so profound. She said that Vegas is definitely racist. She sees it as a teacher. And she also said that it's the society. I would say and raise the question, who runs the society? See, we like to say society, society, society. Let's just call it for what it is.
Speaking of society.
The white society.
Well,
let's keep it 100.
Speaking of society,
even with how I dress, this suit, this is a European suit.
Nice. Yes.
But this is not my culture.
Sure.
If I was in Africa, I would have on a traditional African dashiki. I would have a kufi, right? So we have to dress to fit in the part.
Well,
if I come to work with dashiki on, what they gonna say to me?
You're acclimating to social standards.
We have no choice.
You mentioned who's running the country.
Would you prefer to dress the way that you just described, or,
I do own
the
a
way
couple
that you
of good
dress today?
dashikis. I like a good suit.
Yeah.
I like a good
because
suit.
this is a very. I mean, your attire is very nice today.
I would love
but
to
you
talk
see my
about-
point though, as far as like we don't run the society. So when I say that
You don't set
white
the
people can only be
standards.
racist, we don't set that standard.
Okay, speaking about white people, I would love to talk about dashikis
I'm
for
gonna put
20
my
minutes.
jacket
But
on,
let's. Okay, so as you know, Stretch, Donald Trump used the word lynching to describe the impeachment, okay? A word that should never be used by anyone, particularly a white person, in my personal opinion. Senator Lindsey Graham is now defending Trump's tweet describing the impeachment inquiry as lynching. This is what Lindsey Graham said.
Okay.
I think that's pretty well accurate. This is a sham. This is a joke. So, yeah, this is a lynching, and in every sense, this is un-American. First of all, what do you make of President Trump's comments calling it a lynching, and now Lindsey Graham defending the comments?
May the Lord watch Donald Trump. God bless him. He's a character. We know that. I don't really respond or react to it like I used to because at this point, we have saw it all. But I will say that, he likes to take different statements out of context, and we know what he's trying to do. He's trying to get a rise out of us. But I will say that that's a powerful word. He needs to not use language like that because at the end of the day, they said, I think it was close to 3.2 million black folks was lynched from 1935 to 1940-something, 1905, 1940. Millions were lynched and unknown. So when you use that term, I mean, you're striking a chord, particularly with those who are from the African diaspora. Does he care? Of course not. But I think that end of the day, he's a clown. He's a character who tries to use certain statements to get a rise.
And the fact that Lindsey Graham is defending the comment, I have zero respect for Lindsey Graham to begin with anyway. Let's get to some more phone calls. 257-5396 is the number to call. Let's go to Tom. Tom, you're next with the minister. Go ahead.
What's up, Tom?
Good show.
Thank you.
I appreciate the balance. I called in to object to blaming white supremacy for the graffiti and vandalism that was committed at UNLV, because the last I knew, we did not have any suspects in custody, so I don't think we know whether the perpetrators were white or non-white.
You're right, we don't.
Oftentimes, if not usually, these kinds of acts are committed by non-whites in an effort to make whites look bad. And the only other thing is, as far as blacks cannot be racist, I agree with those who believe that whites are probably the least racist of all the races, because I think they are still the only race in history that we know of that fought and killed their own people for the benefit of another race, namely the black race, as was the case in our own Civil War.
All right, go ahead, Stretch. Go ahead and respond to that.
Well, thank you for that. I've never heard the statement. This is given by a white gentleman that white people are the least racist. That's something. As far as the UNLV statement, I don't think we ever said that it was a white supremacist. I think, and if we did, I think it's more so. It could be though. I mean, if you make a threat against African American students and make a threat against Bernie Sanders, who's a progressive, who supports black people, I mean that's not far fetched for us to think that. As far as the most racist group, as I stated before, white people are, as a whole, can be racist. Are racist. It's white supremacy. I'm not sitting there saying every white person. I have white family members I'm connected to through marriage, and so I'm not against nobody white because of skin. We have nothing wrong with skin. It's the mentality.
Sure.
You understand? So at the end of the day, the statement of white people are the least racist, look at history. He said white people fought in every war, so did black people. But when black soldiers came home, which soldiers got offered the GI Bill, which let them get loans for homes? Now, black soldiers. Yeah. Which ones was told to sit in the back of the bus?
See,
now,
but
white
I don't
folks,
like.
how can you make a
But here's
statement
my
like
problem
that?
with this. I don't like getting into the weeds and saying, "Well, this race is more racist than that race."
But it's the truth. A fact is a fact.
Well, here's a couple of statements.
The proof's in the pudding.
Here's a couple of statements that are used or that are stereotyped by African Americans towards Caucasians, like white man can't jump, white people can't dance. Is that racist to you?
It's not racist. I mean, can it be a stereotype? But also, too,
if I said black people can't get college educations, would you call that a racist statement?
That would be a racist statement.
Okay, so why is it not a racist statement to say white people can't jump?
It's different between making a stereotype that the majority do, and you could say it's factual. If I say white men can't dance,
some white man can dance, not me.
But when we say white men can't, people want to hear. Just because I don't say I don't have to say all. We speaking in general.
So here's a stereotype.
If I say white people can't dance, I'm not saying all white people. There are some white men who teach hip hop.
You're saying the majority of white. So if there's some
and a majority of white men can dance.
A majority fact attached to it, then it's not racist.
Right. Let's take some more phone calls because we only have a few more minutes. 257-5396. Let's go to Joshua, who's been waiting patiently on hold. Joshua, you're on with the minister. Go ahead.
What's up, Josh?
Hi, how's it going? So my question was about how you were kind of phrasing your statement. You said that you are for black people and empowering black people. And I believe that statement in itself is inherently racist because you're excluding every other race from who you're trying to empower. Now, if you were to say I'm for empowering people, then I think that's fantastic. But if we reverse it and I say I'm for white people and empowering white people, then I sound like a racist.
Of course, because why would you make a statement saying I'm for empowering white people? You are already powered. See, white people are missing the point. The point is, the gentleman just said, black people are sagging. We're in the ghettos. How are we going to get out of that condition? By just going to college? The man goes to college and come back, he can be subject to be killed. We have to raise out of that condition. I never said I'm not into empowering white people. Most of my events that I do, the giveaways, there are more whites that show up than black. I never said I didn't. See, we think because I'm not saying, just like we said Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. Whenever white folks don't hear them being a part of it, they get offended. You run everything. You don't have to be a part of everything. White people don't give Mexicans the same problem or Chinatown. But if I say I wanted Blacktown, why they have all town? You don't say it to the Mexicans. You don't say it to the Koreans. You don't say it to Little Italy in New York.
Josh, go ahead and respond to that.
Yeah, but you don't have to involve race in it. Once you involve race in it, you are racist. If you are for empowering people, then you're not being racist. Once you take one individual group and say you're for them, then it's automatically racist.
Then I'll be a racist then, because I'm going to empower black people till I'm in the grave. But I'm not going to ever say, when I go on the street and a white person needs my help, I don't be like, no, I'm only for empowering black folks. No, I believe in serving people.
Sure.
So I am for empowering all people. But at the end of the day, when I say first, my number one obligation is to serve my own. Home, that's self-preservation. Take care of home first.
Barack Obama was president from 2008 to 2016. At what point, how was there not empowerment towards African Americans during that 8-year period?
That was a form of empowerment. But at the end of the day, it can't just be on President Obama. I think that President Obama gave us hope. That was the first time we had a black person that was seen across the globe who was not playing ball, who was not known for rapping, who was not known for any form of entertainment. He worked his butt off in school, got in politics, and climbed to be the president of the United States of America.
And I have a tremendous amount of respect
for him.
That's
empowerment in itself.
I always tell people
the
biggest, and I don't want to get into the weeds here with Obama, but I always tell people, I don't think Obama was a perfect president. I thought he made a lot of mistakes. However, I have a ton of respect for Barack Obama. The reason why I don't have the same respect for Donald Trump, nobody gave anything to Barack Obama. He was raised by a mother. He went to Harvard. No, he didn't buy himself into Harvard. He worked hard. He's an extremely intelligent guy. He's a good husband. He's a good father. Nothing to do with politics, nothing to do with policy. Barack Obama worked his ass off to become the president of the United States, and I will always respect him for that. 257-5396. Let's go to Jim. Jim, you're next on the Vegas Take. Thanks for calling in. What's on your mind? Jim, are you there? We lost Jim. 257-5396 is the number to call. I believe our next caller is Richard. Richard, thanks for calling in. You are on with the minister, Stretch Sanders. Go ahead, Richard.
What's up, Richard?
Yeah, I think that, for the most part, using race to blame a particular group, it's just a game that politicians play to divide us from each other. Most Asians do a lot better in school than most white people, and the reason why, it's not because Asians are smarter, it's because Asia has, Asians tend to have a culture that respects honor, hard work, and discipline.
Yeah, they work harder and they go to school for 2 hours longer a day.
That's it. You work harder, you get more. It's like it's more to do with culture, and then cultures that it's easy to hate another culture and say they're different and they're getting over than actually to say, hey, that culture's got something we don't have.
All right.
Why don't we look at that culture and see what they bring?
And your IQ increases as you're working harder, as you're learning more. So that's just kind of, they go hand in hand.
All right, Richard, let's Stretch respond to that. Go ahead, Stretch.
Well, my position is I believe in unity of the human family. I state that first and foremost. But I also believe that in order for us to unify, the white family have to be honest with themselves and understand the condition of what exactly has happened to black people. A lot of white people, when they see black people coming together, it's a guilt thing. because they fear that if we ever come to power, we will do to them as they done to us. And that's never been the case. Black people are peaceful people. We've never, ever tried to advocate violence against any other community. But the white family has been the community that has caused us the most hell. We had our own communities. They burned it down. They lynched us. They slaved us. They put us in Jim Crow. They lock us up wholesale. That's not black on black crime. That's white on black crime.
Mm-hmm.
But are we blaming every white person? No. But we are telling that every white person benefits from that privilege, benefits from what their ancestors done in the past. Were there some white people who are descendants of those who didn't own slaves and who was on the side of blacks? Of course it is. I'm not blaming every white person. All I'm saying is I'm generalizing. All my statements are general.
Well, we only got about a minute and a half left here. I got about 30 seconds for Ken. Ken, go ahead. You're on with Stretch.
Yeah, well, first I'd like to say yes, there is black violence against whites. I grew up in Detroit, and I got my butt kicked almost every day because I was the only white kid in school. But I'd like to say, if the white man's holding you down, then why isn't Africa such a great mecca to go live to? There's no white people holding people down there in Africa, so why isn't that Shangri-La there?
All right, let's let him answer. That's a fair question. Go ahead, Stretch.
Black people do kill white people. Every race has killed and crossed over and killed each other. What I'm saying is, when you look at the conditions of black people, we're put in that condition because white supremacy put us in that situation. So when I see black killing black, it's because we have been subjugated to behave like that because of slavery and racism. As far as what you're saying, you're thinking I'm saying that black people don't kill. No, every race kills.
And we all have made that statement, and I agree. Well, Stretch, we got to go to break. We could continue this conversation for hours. I have a feeling you'll be back next week.
Absolutely.
Sorry for all the callers that didn't get through, but I appreciate you coming in, Stretch. Thank you so much. It's a good debate. It's a good conversation. I always enjoy it when you come in. It doesn't mean we're always going to agree on everything. Thank you so much for being here, though. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you, brothers. I appreciate
thanks a lot, Stretch.
Yep, we appreciate it. All right, there you go. It is the Minister Stretch Sanders Hour, and we will certainly invite him back in studio sometime soon. All right, coming up next, we're going to preview the World Series with Michael Shapiro from Sports Illustrated. Take a quick break. Be back right after this.
This is the Vegas Take with Sharp and Shapiro.
Come on, guys!